Evan Hale had always been fascinated by the stars, but he never imagined he would stand at the edge of a forest where the light bent in strange ways, and the air hummed with energy he could barely explain. Outpost Helion, the human research base, had long monitored the alien forests on the nearby planet of Zythera, a place untouched by human hands until now. Most of the time, the humans studied from a distance, careful not to disturb the alien species that called the dense green world home. But today, Evan had a different task. Check the malfunctioning sensor array near the forest border. He walked along the narrow trail, boots crunching against the soft, mossy ground. His hand brushed against the cool metal of his tool belt, and he adjusted the strap on his shoulder. The air smelled faintly of ozone and wildflowers, a strange mix that made his skin tingle. He paused, glancing at the twisted trees. They were taller than anything on Earth, with leaves that shimmered faintly, as if they held light inside them. Evan crouched beside the first sensor, a small metallic pole with blinking lights. Something had been interfering with its readings for the past week, and the research team needed it fixed quickly. He wiped off the thin layer of dew and opened the panel. Sparks flickered briefly, and then the lights steadied. Evan muttered to himself, satisfied. But then he felt it movement behind the trees. He froze. The forest was usually quiet, apart from the occasional bird-like call or rustle of small creatures. This was different. The movement was deliberate, slow, cautious. His heart picked up its pace, but he reminded himself to stay calm. From the shadows stepped a figure unlike anything he had seen before. Small, delicate, and humanoid, yet with skin that shimmered faintly in green and blue tones, and large, luminous eyes that reflected the sunlight in a way that made him squint. Evan's mouth went dry. The creature, he soon realized it was a girl, young by her species' standards, stood frozen for a moment, studying him as carefully as he studied her. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her limbs moved with a grace that made him feel clumsy by comparison. "Hello?" he said cautiously, raising a hand in greeting. The alien girl flinched slightly at his voice but did not run. Instead, she tilted her head, as if trying to understand what he was. Evan noticed the soft glow from her skin pulses gently, like a heartbeat in color. He had read about the Arelin, the shy alien species native to this forest. They rarely interacted with humans, fearing that physical contact could overwhelm both species. But curiosity, he realized, could sometimes outweigh fear. The girl took a careful step forward. "You, human?" she said, her voice melodic, soft, almost like wind through glass. "Yes," Evan replied, smiling gently. "I'm Evan. I come in peace. I'm just fixing some equipment here." Her large eyes widened, and she slowly lowered herself to sit on a moss-covered rock nearby, keeping her distance. Evan returned to his sensor, pretending to check the wires, though he kept glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. For a long moment, there was silence. The only sound was the faint hum of the energy in the forest and the occasional click of the sensor. Then, the girl's curiosity seemed to get the better of her. She reached out a finger, hovering it near the metal casing Evan had been adjusting. Evan froze. Something inside him warned that even a small gesture could trigger an unexpected reaction. But before he could speak, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, and a small energy surge shot from the sensor. The pulse was weak, but enough to make him step back. The girl gasped and, without thinking, reached out and touched Evan's wrist. It happened in an instant. A soft, bright glow spread from the point of contact, wrapping them both in warmth and light. Evan felt a wave of calm and clarity rush through him, emotions he had never known so intensely washing over his mind. He saw flashes of images, not memories, exactly, but feelings. Wonder, curiosity, loneliness, and a strange sense of connection. The girl, Leora, felt it too. She had touched a human before, only in stories told by elders, but she had never imagined it would feel like this. The warmth was comforting, almost overwhelming. Yet there was a clarity that made her understand things she could not have known. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, as suddenly as it started, the glow faded, leaving only the quiet rustle of the trees. Leora's hand hovered in the air for a moment before she pulled it back, trembling slightly. Evan looked at her, wide-eyed, a mixture of awe and disbelief on his face. "You did that?" he whispered. She shook her head, words failing her. Her large eyes looked almost fearful now, the glow of her skin dimming. She had not meant for the light to appear. She had only wanted to touch, to feel. "It's okay," Evan said gently. I think it's amazing. I don't know what just happened, but I think we need to understand it." Leora hesitated. The stories from her people warned that humans were unpredictable, dangerous even. And now this small act had changed something inside her. She wanted to run, but a strange trust held her in place. Finally, she nodded slightly and whispered, "You, human, not afraid?" Evan smiled. "Not afraid, just curious." Curiosity seemed to relax her. She looked around at the forest, then back at him. "Curious? Yes. Like me." They spent the next few minutes examining the sensor together, a silent understanding forming between them. Evan explained what the sensor did, how it measured energy flows and environmental changes, using simple gestures to communicate. Leora watched carefully, her head tilted in concentration. She mimicked his movements, touching the sensor lightly, feeling the vibrations and currents of energy that hummed through the metal. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Evan knew he should return to the base before the night fully set in. "I need to go back," he said softly. "The team will worry." Leora stood, brushing leaves from her legs. "Will see again?" she asked, a note of hope in her voice. Evan nodded. "Yes. I want to understand all of this, and maybe understand you too." "Evan, understand you too." She smiled faintly, a small curve of her lips that seemed almost human in its simplicity. Then, almost reluctantly, she turned and ran into the forest, moving so quickly that she seemed to float above the ground. Evan watched her go, feeling a strange emptiness in her absence, but also a deep curiosity he could not ignore. On the way back to the outpost, Evan kept glancing at his wrist where she had touched him. The warmth lingered longer than it should have, a gentle hum that seemed almost alive. He wondered if it had changed him, if something inside him had awakened. Back at Outpost Helion, he reported the sensor as repaired, but he could not bring himself to mention the alien girl. The command team would not understand. They would call it a glitch, a misreading, anything but what it truly was. That night, Evan could not sleep. He replayed the moment of contact over and over in his mind. The pulse of light, the connection, the strange feelings that lingered. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that what had happened would change not only him and Leora, but potentially the relationship between humans and the Arelin forever. Far away, in the heart of the forest, Leora sat under the silver leaves of a towering tree, her mind filled with thoughts she could barely explain. The touch of a human had awakened something within her, a curiosity, a connection, a power. She did not yet understand it, but she knew one thing clearly. She would find him again. The forest around her shimmered in the moonlight, quiet and watchful. For the first time in history, a human and an Arelin had touched, and the consequences were only beginning. The days after the first contact were strange for Evan Hale. The warmth from Leora's touch lingered in his mind and body. A soft hum that pulsed like a quiet heartbeat. Every sound, every movement around him, felt sharper, more alive. Even simple things like the wind brushing against his cheek or the soft vibrations from his boots on the metal floor of Outpost Helion carried a depth he had never noticed before. Evan tried to focus on his work. He checked equipment, logged readings, and ran diagnostics, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the alien girl. Her face, her glowing eyes, the shimmer of her skin, it haunted him. He could not explain why he felt so connected to someone he had only met once, someone from a species that humans rarely interacted with. Meanwhile, in the forest, Leora was experiencing changes of her own. She had always been sensitive to energy patterns in her surroundings, but now the touch had unlocked something new. She could sense emotions more clearly, not just in other Erelin, but faintly from humans as well. She could almost hear Evan's feelings across the distance. A gentle curiosity, and a quiet loneliness that mirrored her own. The elders of the Erelin Council had noticed the change in her. Leora had returned to the village, but she moved differently now, more aware of the energy around her, more cautious, and yet more confident. The council, a group of tall, graceful figures with silver eyes, met in secret to discuss the incident. "She touched the human," said one elder, voice low and trembling with concern. "This is unprecedented." "Unprecedented," agreed another. "The human interaction might awaken a latent bond. We do not know what it could lead to." Leora, standing quietly nearby, listened. She felt the tension in the air, the weight of generations of caution pressing on her. But she also felt a spark of excitement. For the first time, she felt that humans were not only strangers, they could be allies, companions, maybe even something more. Back at the outpost, Evan could not shake the feeling that he and Leora were linked. Small things triggered it. When he felt joy, he imagined her smiling. When he was frustrated, he sensed her restlessness. At first, he thought he was imagining it. But one afternoon, when he closed his eyes and focused, he clearly heard a voice, not with his ears, but in his mind, soft and curious. "Human, why not afraid?" Evan jumped, nearly dropping his tool. He looked around, half expecting someone from the base to be playing a prank, but the lab was empty. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Leora?" "Yes," the voice replied, faint but unmistakable. "Feel same?" Evan felt the strange hum again, stronger this time, flowing from his chest to his fingertips. "I think so," he said. "Something changed. Something is connecting us." The realization hit him. Their touch had not been a simple contact, it had activated a bond, a connection neither species had fully understood until now. Over the next few days, Evan and Leora experimented cautiously. They began meeting at the forest edge, hidden from the view of others. At first, they spoke through gestures, showing objects and pointing to the sensors or the trees. But as their bond strengthened, words became unnecessary. Evan could sense when Leora was curious, excited, or cautious. Leora could feel his thoughts and even understand complex ideas without him speaking. During one of their secret meetings, Evan asked, "Do you feel the same energy I feel?" Leora's eyes glowed faintly. "Yes, it is like we share a heartbeat." They laughed softly, a sound mingling human and alien, blending strangely in the quiet forest. Evan reached out, careful this time, and touched her hand. The glow returned, brighter but gentle, and they both felt the rush of understanding. For the first time, their species' differences did not matter, they were simply two beings connected by something greater than themselves. But the bond did more than just create feelings. One day, while Evan tried to repair a small energy relay, a tool slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Normally, it would have been a minor annoyance. But at that moment, he felt a surge of clarity. His hands moved on their own, guided by intuition he did not understand. The tool hovered, as if lifted by an invisible force, assembling itself perfectly with the components he had been working on. Leora watched in amazement. Human can do, like energy, she said, her voice full of awe. We can do together? Evan smiled. They spent the next hour experimenting. Whenever their hands were close, their bond seemed to amplify energy around them. Small devices they touched hummed to life, plants grew slightly faster, even the air felt charged with a soft warmth. They were careful. Of course, neither wanted to draw attention from the humans or the elders. But the potential of what they could do was undeniable. It was during one of these experiments that the first warning came. Deep in the forest, a low rumble shook the ground. Trees swayed unnaturally, and a faint red glow appeared through the thick foliage. Evan instinctively grabbed Leora's hand, and together they focused on the energy around them, trying to calm it. The glow faded slightly, but the rumble persisted. We, not alone, Leora said, eyes wide. Something awake. Evan nodded. We need to tell someone. But who? The outpost might not believe us. Leora hesitated. The elders of her people had warned her never to reveal the bond to humans. But now, she realized, the warning might have been meant to protect her, not to control knowledge. We need help, both of us. The next day, they approached the edge of the forest together, Evan leading carefully, Leora slightly behind, glancing back nervously. When they reached the human outpost, Evan went straight to the base's energy lab. Dr. Reyes, Evan called. There's something you need to see. Dr. Helena Reyes, the lead scientist, turned with a frown. What is it, Hale? You're late again. Did you fix the sensor? Evan shook his head. Not just the sensor. There's something happening in the forest. I think it's connected to Leora. The mention of her name caused Dr. Reyes to raise an eyebrow. Leora? You mean an alien? Did you bring one into the base? Evan hesitated. No, not here. But she touched me. Something happened. I think we're connected. Dr. Reyes blinked, then frowned. Connected how? Evan took a deep breath and explained everything. The pulse of light, the feelings, the shared energy, and the strange abilities they had begun to notice. He spoke carefully, knowing it sounded unbelievable. Dr. Reyes listened silently, her arms crossed. Then she leaned forward, eyes wide with fascination. If what you're saying is true, this could change everything. Humans and Erlen, working together, sharing energy. It's unprecedented. Evan nodded. I know. But there's more. Something is awakening in the forest. I think we need to act before it becomes dangerous. Dr. Reyes paused, considering. We'll need proof. And if this bond is real, we have to understand it. But you're right. We cannot ignore it. Meanwhile, Leora was watching from the edge of the forest. She could feel Evan's thoughts, his determination, his worry. It reassured her. She took a deep breath, her chest glowing faintly with the soft light of their connection. She had never felt courage like this before. She was ready to face whatever came next, as long as Evan was by her side. That evening, as the twin moons rose over the forest, Evan and Leora met in their secret place. The air was filled with anticipation, the energy between them stronger than ever. Small sparks danced around their hands when they touched, a sign that their bond was growing. We need to prepare, Evan said. Whatever is awakening, we have to be ready. And I think we can face it together. Leora nodded, her eyes shining. Together, always. The forest hummed around them, alive and ancient. Something deep within it had noticed the bond, and it was responding. Neither Evan nor Leora fully understood what lay ahead. But one thing was certain. Their connection had awakened, more than feelings, it had awakened a power, one that could change the future of both their species. And somewhere, in the shadows of the forest, the first hints of an ancient presence stirred, sensing the human and the Aralen, whose touch had bridged worlds for the first time. Word count: to 1,400. The forest seemed quieter than usual, though a faint hum of energy lingered in the air. Evan and Leora moved carefully through the moss-covered paths, following the trail of faint red light that had appeared during the tremor. The energy pulse had been stronger than anything they had felt before, almost alive, as if the forest itself was aware of them. Evan glanced at Leora. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. Leora nodded, her skin shimmering softly in the moonlight. The trees grew taller as they walked, their branches twisting into shapes that seemed almost intentional. Evan felt the hum of energy pulsing through the ground, through the roots, even through the metal of his tools. Leora reached out her hand, and the connection between them flared to life. He could feel her thoughts and emotions clearer than ever: curiosity, determination, and a faint caution. After what felt like hours of careful walking, they arrived at a clearing. In the center was a strange structure, half buried under moss and vines. It was made of a crystal-like material that shimmered with colors neither of them could name. Symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, pulsing with energy in rhythm with their own bond. Leora stepped forward, tracing the symbols with her fingers. "These, ancient," she whispered. "Our people, we, never touch." Evan knelt beside her, examining the carvings. "It looks like a device, something to contain energy. But from who?" As they studied it, the structure responded to their presence. A soft hum filled the air, and the symbols glowed brighter. When Evan hesitated and lightly touched one of the carvings, a vision unfolded before their eyes. Holographic images that floated above the crystal. They saw a civilization long gone, humanoid in appearance but unlike any human or Aralen. They built cities among the stars, traveling between worlds, forming alliances between species. But something had happened, a war or a disaster, that forced them to leave messages for future generations. One of the images focused on two figures, a human and an Aralen, standing side by side, touching hands. Light flared from the point of contact, filling the chamber. Symbols of unity, harmony, and cooperation appeared in the air. Leora gasped. Us?" she whispered. Evan shook his head slowly. "It can't be. Not exactly. But maybe. It shows the purpose of this connection. We're not the first to share this bond. It was meant to unite humans and Aralen, like a bridge." A voice echoed in Evan's mind, soft and old, carrying knowledge beyond words. "The bond awakens only when the two species are ready. Together, you can harness what was lost. Together, you can protect your worlds." Leora's eyes widened. "Protect worlds?" Before Evan could respond, the ground trembled again, stronger this time. The red glow returned, spreading across the forest floor like veins of fire. Birds and creatures fled, the air charged with energy that made Evan's hair stand on end. "We need to calm it," he said, gripping Leora's hand. Their bond flared as they focused together, sending pulses of energy into the ground. The glow diminished slightly, but the tremors persisted. Leora felt fear, but also determination. "It wants something. We must understand." Evan nodded. "Then let's go deeper." They moved closer to the heart of the energy, where the ground opened into a hollow cavern filled with crystals. Each crystal pulsed with faint red and blue light, resonating with their bond. As they approached, the symbols on the walls began to shift, forming patterns they could recognize. Evan ran his hands over the carvings. They're instructions. They tell how to use our bond." Leora focused, reading the symbols with her mind. "We Combine energy. We guide it. At that moment, a low rumble shook the cavern. A massive energy surge erupted from one of the larger crystals. It shot toward them like a wave, threatening to knock them off their feet. Evan reacted instinctively, grabbing Leora and bracing against the force. Their bond ignited, sending a pulse of light outward. The surge collided with their energy and fragmented, dispersing safely across the cavern. Leora looked at Evan, eyes wide. Evan nodded, panting. We can. Together. Alone, we'd never survive. But together, we can shape this energy. As they explored further, they discovered another chamber. This one contained carvings that told a story humans and Aralen once lived in harmony, sharing knowledge, technology, and culture. But fear and misunderstanding had separated them. The ancient civilization had left the crystal structures as a guide, waiting for the right pair to awaken the bond again. Leora touched one of the carvings. A soft glow emanated from her fingers, and for a moment, she could see visions of humans and Aralen working side by side, building cities, exploring space, sharing discoveries. It wants us to do same, she said. Evan's mind raced. We have to bring this knowledge back to both our people. But first, we need to control it. We need to understand the full bond, the setter formants. For the next few hours, they experimented in the chamber. Whenever they touched, the energy between them surged, responding to thoughts and emotions. A simple gesture could light a crystal, move small stones, or even heal minor cracks in the cavern walls. The bond was powerful, but it required focus, cooperation, and trust. You trust me? Leora asked softly, her hand resting lightly on his. Evan smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him. With everything I am, we're in this together. As night fell over the forest, a new realization hit them. The tremors, the red glow, and the ancient device were not random. They were warnings. Something else had awakened. Something that the bond alone might not be able to stop. Leora shivered. We, not alone. Something, coming. Evan's grip on her hand tightened. Then, we need to be ready. Whatever it is, we face it together. That's the only way we'll survive. From deep within the forest, a shadow moved. It was massive, unseen, and the ground trembled as if it carried the weight of mountains. Evan could feel its presence through the bond, its power, its curiosity, and its danger. He shivered, realizing that their discovery was not just about understanding the past. It was about preparing for a threat that could endanger both humans and Aralen. The bond between them flared brighter. As if responding to the danger, energy swirled around their joined hands, the crystals in the cavern pulsing in response. They had unlocked power beyond their comprehension, but power alone would not be enough. They would need strategy, courage, and complete trust in each other. Leora's voice was steady, even as her skin shimmered brighter than before. We, ready, together. Evan nodded, feeling a surge of confidence he had never known. Together. Evan. The ancient crystal seemed to hum in approval, sending a soft pulse through the cavern. A message, clear though wordless, filled their minds. The bond is awakened. The challenge begins. Evan and Leora left the cavern with a new sense of purpose. They had discovered the truth behind their connection. It was not random, not accidental. Their touch had been the key to awakening a bond that could unite species, harness energy, and face dangers no one had imagined. But as they stepped back into the forest, the tremors intensified. The shadow they had felt earlier moved closer, unseen but undeniable. Evan looked at Leora, their hands still joined. This is only the beginning. Leora's eyes glowed softly. We face together. Always. And together, They did. The bond between human and Aralen had awakened not only their abilities, but a shared destiny. One that would test their courage, their trust, and the strength of a connection that could change the future of two worlds. The forest watched silently, ancient and alive. The bond had been awakened. The challenge had begun. The forest quivered under a strange energy as Evan and Leora stood at the edge of the cavern, their hands joined tightly. The bond between them pulsed with light, stronger than ever before, as if it sensed the approaching danger. The shadow they had felt in the depths of the forest was moving closer, unseen but undeniably powerful. Every step it took caused the ground to tremble and the leaves to quiver. Evan took a deep breath. We've prepared as much as we can. Now, we face it. Leora nodded, her large eyes glowing with determination. Together, always. As they advanced, the red glow that had haunted the forest began to expand, spreading across the trees in veins of fiery light. The creatures of the forest had vanished, fleeing from the unknown force. The air crackled with energy, and Evan felt it tugging at him, testing the limits of his connection to Leora. Suddenly, the shadow revealed itself. It was massive, towering over the tallest trees, its form shifting like liquid darkness. Its eyes, glowing faintly red, focused on them, and Evan could feel its intelligence. It was not merely a force of nature. It was aware, curious, and dangerous. Leora's grip tightened. It sees us. Evan nodded. Then, it's time. He concentrated, sending waves of energy from their bond into the forest. The pulse radiated outward, interacting with the shadow. The dark figure recoiled slightly, testing, as if unsure what to make of this new force. The shadow lunged, faster than Evan could react, and the ground shook violently. Trees bent under the pressure, and rocks tumbled from the cliffs around them. But Evan and Leora stood firm, their bond a shield of light and energy. The moment their hands touched, the energy flared, surrounding them in a glowing cocoon. "We can do this," Evan shouted, feeling the strength of their connection flow through him. Leora nodded, her skin shimmering brighter than ever. "Focus." Together, they began to guide the energy, sending waves that met the shadow's attacks. Every movement, every thought, every pulse of emotion between them strengthened the bond. They felt each other's courage, each other's fear, each other's hope, and transformed it into power. The shadow lashed out again, striking the cocoon, but Evan and Leora's synchronized energy absorbed the impact. The bond reacted instinctively, expanding in light and warmth. Small tendrils of energy spread into the forest, calming the tremors and stabilizing the roots of the massive trees. Evan's mind raced. "It's testing us. It wants to know if we can control the bond." Leora's voice was steady. "Then we show it. We are ready." They moved together, focusing on a single point in front of them. A bright pulse of light shot from their joined hands, striking the shadow with precision. The creature recoiled, its dark form breaking apart into smaller pieces of shifting energy. Evan and Leora maintained their focus, guiding each pulse, each wave, until the shadow began to dissipate entirely, retreating into the far reaches of the forest. When the last trace of it vanished, the forest fell silent. The red glow faded, replaced by the soft, natural light of the twin moons above. The tremors stopped, and the wind returned to its gentle rustle through the trees. Evan let out a long breath. "We did it." Leora smiled faintly, exhaustion clear in her posture, but not in her spirit. "Together, we can face anything." For a moment, they simply stood there, hands still joined, feeling the lingering pulse of energy between them. It was no longer just a connection, it was a bridge, a force that could heal, protect, and unite. As they returned to the cavern, the ancient crystals glowed softly, responding to the bond that now flowed freely between the human and the Aralen girl. The holographic images from before shimmered, showing the past civilizations once again. This time, however, Evan and Leora could sense a new message forming within the crystals. The bond is restored. Harmony begins again. Evan looked at Leora, awe in his eyes. We've done more than survive. We've awakened something bigger than both our species. Leora nodded, her glow softening. Yes, we are the bridge. Now, we must teach others. The journey back to the human outpost was quiet, yet filled with a new energy. Even though the threat had been defeated, Evan and Leora knew their work had just begun. The bond was powerful, but it required guidance, understanding, and patience. Dr. Helena Reyes met them at the edge of the forest, her eyes wide with a mix of concern and amazement. Evan explained briefly, focusing on the bond and the shadow. Dr. Reyes listened, and then her expression shifted. This changes everything. Humans and Erlen have never had a connection like this before. We must study it, understand it, and prepare for anything that comes next. Leora stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. We need both our peoples. We can protect together, but we must trust each other. Dr. Reyes nodded slowly. Then we will. Your bond is the start of something new, something that can bring our worlds together. Over the following days, Evan and Leora continued to explore their abilities. They discovered that their bond allowed them to sense danger, guide energy, and even communicate silently across distances. Each day, their understanding grew, and so did the trust between them. The Erlen elders came to meet Evan formally, cautious but curious. Leora introduced him, explaining their connection. The elders observed the subtle energy pulses when their hands touched, and some of the older members even tested it themselves, witnessing the faint flow of shared understanding. This is more than a bond, said the oldest elder. It is a legacy. You two are chosen to carry it forward, to restore harmony between our peoples. Evan felt a surge of pride and responsibility. Then we will. We'll protect both our worlds, together. Leora reached out, her fingers brushing his again. Light flared briefly, a reminder of the energy they now shared. Together. Always, she whispered. Months passed, and the bond continued to grow. Humans and Erlen began collaborating cautiously, guided by Evan and Leora. Simple projects, building energy relays, studying the forest, exploring safe zones became symbols of cooperation. The bond between them inspired others, showing that differences could be bridged and that trust could create strength. But Evan and Leora never forgot the forest, the ancient crystals, or the shadow that had tested them. They returned often, training together, exploring deeper areas, and discovering secrets left by the civilizations of long ago. Each time, their bond grew stronger, their understanding deeper. One evening, as the sun set behind the twin moons, Evan and Leora stood at the edge of the forest, hands clasped. The glow of their bond pulsed softly, reflecting in the shimmering leaves around them. Do you think it will ever end? Evan asked quietly. Leora shook her head, a small smile on her lips. No, it is forever. Our bond. It is part of who we are, and it will guide our people toward peace. Evan smiled, feeling the warmth flow from her hand into his heart. The forest was quiet, but alive, watching them. Somewhere in the depths, the echoes of ancient civilizations seemed to hum, acknowledging the human and the Erlen who had restored the bond. Their touch had changed everything, not just their lives, but the destiny of two worlds. And in that quiet moment, Evan realized something profound. Sometimes, a single touch could spark a connection that reshaped the universe. Together, hand in hand, human and alien, they stepped forward into the future, a future where trust, courage, and understanding could conquer fear, and where the bond they shared would light the path for generations to come. The forest hummed softly, the crystals glimmered in the moonlight, and the bond between human and Arlen shone as a symbol of hope, a bridge between worlds, and proof that even the smallest touch could change everything.